Afternoon, folks. I'm Dave Canterbury with Self-Reliance Outfitters in the Pathfinder School. Back in another video in our series, Gear of the 20th Century Woodsman. And today we're going to talk about the Woodman Pal. And this was a tool that was carried by forestry people, by military people as well, and woodsmen throughout the mid-20th century. We're going to discuss this tool and its uses as well as its military applications today. Stay with me. So, for a minute, let's discuss this tool in and of itself, this Woodman's Pal. And again, it's Woodsmans, not Woodsmans. It's not plural. The word woodsman, as we use it today, is actually a plural for multiple men in the woods. This was called the Woodman's Pal, using the Old English version of woodman, which means a single person or single man in the woods. So this is called the Woodman's Pal. Again, it was patented in 1943, created in 1941. It is still made to this day in the United States, in Pennsylvania. It's made from 1075 cold rolled steel at a Rockwell of about 47. So it can maintain a good edge, but it also can take a lot of abuse because it is a spring steel. Also because of the fact that it's a softer steel like 1075 as compared to a 1095 or an 01, it's easier to resharpen in the field. And if you were to ding it up, those things are easier to remove or to readjust, I guess is the word for it, to reprofile in the woods if you're to damage the tool. The tool was made to, number one, it has a guard. Not all of these tools had a guard on them. The military versions all had this D-guard on the hand grip. But it has several things on this tool that make it multifunctional. It has a limbing blade up here at the top where there's a hook, very similar to a European bill hook style tool that was made for limbing. And if you look at this tool, the way it's created, it's really a right-handed tool. It was made for limbing right-handed in that it's only beveled on one side of the tool, not both sides. So it was actually made for the right-handed person, although I have used mine left-handed several times. It has a good area here that you can use to baton the blade, and a long, flat, straight blade here, bevel on both sides. That can be used for chopping, land clearing, and things like that, which led it into being a good tool for the military. It also has a blade on the front that can be used for digging as a shovel or also for cutting, but mainly it was a digging type implement on the front. So you had the bill hook for limbing, you had a digging tool for exposing roots and things like that, and then you also had a chopping tool, all in one tool, which made it very conducive for land clearing for surveyors, prospectors, agricultural people, forestry people, and things like that. But it also had very good application for the military. And this was noticed in 1944. And from 1944, World War II, up until Desert Storm, this tool was used by the U.S. military and issued to the U.S. military, especially within the Signal Corps, for clearing lanes and things like that for communications. But also, there was a version of this created, which I have here, that is a shorter version of the LCB 14 or 15, excuse me, the LC14B. This shorter version was made for the pilot's survival kit, and it's got a little bit shorter blade, and it came with a couple implements. It also came with several booklets, and we'll talk about those real quick because it also showed in these booklets how to use this as a survival tool as well as a fighting implement. And it came with some survival necessities in this case. And this is an original Vietnam era pilot survival case here with the clip and the zippered canvas pouch for the tool. So let's take a closer look at that. So as I said, this military version here came with a metal scabbard that the tool slid into, could be snapped into with a leather wrap here with a snap device, and then it had a metal guard sheath for it and a place that it could be slipped over a belt for the military, for military use. And you can see this one says Woodman Pal 280, trademark patent number, Victor Tool Company, Reading, Pennsylvania. And that was the original manufacturing company of the Woodman Pal when it was patented in 1943, was the Victor Tool Company. Now, this other tool, the shorter version, was actually made by another contract company, and it hangs up a little bit right here at the top where that bill hook is. So it can be a little difficult to get out of there, and that could be because it's fairly new. This is new old stock. And you can see this one still has a marking on it here, Frank and Warren Incorporated Survival Axe Type 4 Military Spec 8642C. All right, this was the shorter version of the Woodsman PAL, but it was made in exactly the same specifications, just with a little shorter blade. And it came with a sheath that was made from canvas that also had a metal belt clip on it. And some of these were stamped signal cord, but that sheath, I believe, was the same length as this one. Inside this, and these are replacements inside here. These are not what came with it originally, but there was a sharpening stone on one side, which actually had a hole drilled through it and a chain so that you could hang on to it in one pocket inside here, like this. And the other pocket contained a magnification lens, and again, this is a replacement, so that you could start fire, so that it was a survival use tool. And all of those things came inside this pouch. And it also came with some manuals to tell you how to use the tool for different applications. And again, like I said, it's kind of difficult to get this thing in this case. And I don't know if that's just a function of it being brand new. But this top bill hook right here is sometimes tedious to get over the top of that zipper. But it's a nice tool. You had some manuals here that came with it depending on which version you were issued. You have one here that's a care and use manual, and these are duplicates or replications of the originals. This is not an original set of manuals. You can buy these online if you get one of these Woodsman's PALs and you want to get the original paperwork that came with it. You can get reproductions of these online. So you had a care and use manual that showed different ways to use the tool and then ways to maintain the tool as well. Talks about the implements and tools that came inside the pouch, and talks about the tool itself. And it has several black and white pictures inside of it of the tool in use as well. You also had a fighting manual that came with one version of this that was issued during the Vietnam War that showed how to use this as a fighting implement with the D-guard, different stances and postures, disarming postures, things like that in this manual. You had a jungle, living in the jungle with the U.S. Army LC-14B. And this was kind of a jungle survival manual that came with one of the Vietnam issued ones that talked about the tool and how it could be used to affect your survival, from building shelters to processing different types of materials, coconuts and things of that nature. And then you had a survival airman's toolkit manual that came with the airman's survival kit version like this, that was just a small survival manual, again talking about the components that came with the kit, talking about the stone and the sharpening or the magnifying glass, talking about the Woodsman PAL itself, showing how to utilize it, and talking about some of the versions that were issued and what they were used for. In the jungle, showing how to split roofing material from fronds and things like that with the tool. And then another survival saw kit that came with a Woodsman PAL that was also military spec, and I don't have that. I haven't seen one of those for sale anywhere, other than one I saw on eBay for about $255. I saw an example of in a separate post somewhere. But I think it's interesting for us to look at tools like this, because these tools have been used by woodsmen. They have been used by the military, and a lot of military type gear has been used across that border. It's been used in the military. It's also been used by the woodsman, especially in the 1940s, 1950s, 1960s, all the way back into, if you look at books like Camping Out by Gould, who was a Civil War soldier who wrote that book in the late 1800s. He talks about camping out, and he talks about walking around and using different things that were available in the Civil War as gear. And if you look further across history into things like books by Kephart and Warren Miller, Hyatt Verrill and some of those folks, they also speak to using military surplus as their woodsman type gear. So this type gear has been used both in the military and by woodsmen all through the 20th century. So I think it's important that we look at each of these tools as well, because while this is not a common tool for woodmen to use today, there are quite a few people I've seen on different posts and things that I've put out where I've posted pictures of these that say, oh, I have one of those in my ATV. I carry it all the time when I'm deer hunting, things like that for clearing shooting lanes. So it is still a viable tool even to this day, even though you don't see them as prevalent today as you did back in the 40s to the 60s per se. All right, guys, I'm Dave Canterbury with Self-Reliance Outfitters and the Pathfinder School, and I appreciate you joining me today for this quick look at the Woodman's POW, a tool that I think is very versatile. It's a little bit lost in history right now, but I think it's a tool that's still relevant to our bushcraft, survival, and woodsman needs today. I appreciate your views. I appreciate your support. I thank you for everything you do for our school, for our family, and for our business, for all of our sponsors, instructors, affiliates, and friends. And I'll be back with another video as soon as I can. Thanks, guys.